Wow, this is a packed house. This is awesome, and it is so early. I got here at 7:45, and there were people here. You guys are amazing. Thank you for coming. It's so super early, and the energy feels awesome. It was just like buzzing around, meeting people, saying good morning. And one of the particularly special things that I encountered this morning are these posters. Did you guys see these? These are hot. They are signed, numbered, and they are all original pieces of art created by Jeannie and Nick. You guys are awesome. Like, you really have to feel the paper. It is gorgeous. There's ink splatters. They're fantastic. And they're going to be back there by the books for free, so grab one. I've already stolen mine, so don't take that one. So let's get started. Today I am going to do some Q&A after my talk. But if you guys have any questions or thoughts, wow, there's a cursor on this. It's gone. If you guys have any questions or thoughts, comments, photos, tag it online with hashtag #ChooseMust. And that's the best place to find me. That's where all of this content is beginning to organize. On April 8th of last year, I wrote a post, and I put it on Medium, titled "The Crossroads of Should and Must." Like so many of you guys, I share things online all the time. I think I posted an Instagram photo yesterday and maybe 5 or 6 tweets. That's in one day. The spirit of this post was really similar: to create something and then to get it up, to get it out, as Stuart said, to share it. And something happened with this post that had never happened with any of the other posts that I've shared. Within 2 weeks, it was tweeted to over 5 million people and read by over 250,000 readers. Wow. I was actually with my father celebrating his birthday. After I hit publish, I went to go celebrate with him, and I left my phone behind. And I came back from birthday celebration to find my phone totally melted into the credenza. So after this post went out, clearly there was something there. Something was happening. And I wanted to find out more about what that was. And so I extended the essay into a book, which, because the universe is so cool, comes out on April 8th of 2015, 1 year to the day of the original Medium post. That's awesome. So actually, you can't even, I ordered a bunch of books, and the books haven't even arrived yet. So the fact that there are books that are here that you all can experience today is really special, because they're actually not released until, I guess, April 7th. So it's a really special moment in time to be chatting with you guys today. But today I wanted to go back, and I wanted to take you guys back to where the entire journey started. It all began with a dream. In particular, it was a recurring dream that I had night after night. And in this dream, I would walk into a room that had concrete floors, these warm, glowing white walls, warehouse windows that ran the length of one of the walls, and a mattress on the floor. That was it. Very simple. And I would go and I would sit in this room, and you guys, I would be filled with the most profound, deep inner peace. And I would just sit there night after night. One day, a friend asked the question that turned my life upside down and inside out in all the wonderful ways that it can. She said, "Have you ever thought about looking for your dream in real life?" Her question felt ridiculous. I mean, raise your hand if you have ever actually gone to look for your dream in real life, the people, situations, absurdity of our dreams. It felt ridiculous, but there was something about her question that fascinated me. And I began to wonder, when we decide to look for our dreams in real life, where do we go? I mean, where would you even begin? Craigslist. I didn't really know what I was looking for or even what I would find, but I had this feeling, this intuitive feeling that whatever I was looking for was also looking for me too. I don't know any other way to describe it, but like that. It just was this hunch that if I kept looking for this room, eventually I would find it. And one day I did. It was a thumbnail about that big. And it was literally, down to the detail, the room that I had been dreaming about. How does that happen? How does that happen? I have no way of explaining it. But as the universe would also have it, there was an open house the very next day. And I went, and there were a dozen other apartment hunters also there, viewing the white room from my dreams. I was like, no, this was not a part of my magic dream. And I put in my application, and I got the apartment. I moved in 2 weeks later, and on my very first night there, I remember sitting in the space, and it's very strange to have a dream about a space that you sit in, and then to actually go and sit in it in real life. And it was very strange because in the dream, I was always filled with this peace, this like warm, ooey gooey, awesome sense of calm. And when I walked into the white room, I didn't actually have that experience. I totally began to panic. I didn't see that one coming. And I sat on the floor and I looked around and I thought, what have I done? What is all of this about? And I said out loud, why am I here? And as clear as day, as clear as anything I have ever known to be true, the room said right back to me, it's time to paint. I had painted a lot as a little kid. I had painted my way until at some point I didn't. I just stopped. And so the next morning, I went to the art supply store and I rebuilt my toolkit from the ground up. And I went back and I started the hardest journey of my life, which was painting my dream in real life. This is my studio. This is where I would go and collect all manner of objects and drag them into the studio to be painted. This is actually a photo scrim. Like in a photo shoot when you have a seamless backdrop, somebody had just abandoned it on the sidewalk. And I just lifted it right up, took it right into the studio. I just pinned it all up with push pins. You can actually see the ragged edge. It's just literally like my hand, like, we will stop it here. Just cut up the side. This is like my coffee cup for scale. I worked at scales that totally freaked me out. And when big got easy, I very quickly moved to small. It was about moving fast, being light on my feet, just moving, trying to keep going. This was 100 portraits completed in 100 days, self-portraits completed in 100 days as a part of last year's The 100-Day Project, which, for anybody who wants to join, we're starting again in 2 weeks. It's going to be really fun. And I shared all of this. Some of you guys might have seen it. It was sometimes wonderful and sometimes quite a large disaster. I shared all of it on social media, and I very quickly learned that if you were a little unsure about a piece, you could just take your cute small dog, slide her into the shot, And one day something happened that I never could have expected. Some friends came in, they gathered all the paintings, they put them into the back of a van, and they took them to a space here in Soma for a pop-up show. It was a 3-day show in between official artist shows. It was like they kind of had extra walls, and so we got to take over the space. And this is me on opening night, standing amidst, I think, 60 pieces of work created in about a 3-month period. And I think this is the universal symbol for, hey, everyone, I am totally blissed out on life. It was magic. It was that peace, that deep inner alignment in peace, moments before the doors opened. The only catch in all of this is that I had a full-time job. I was the design lead at Mailbox, and we wanted to revolutionize the way that email was processed on the mobile phone. I was a part of a small team of very, very talented people, and we were passionate about taking this idea from a Post-it note all the way through into a product that could be experienced on phones anywhere around the world. Around the same time, I came across a TED Talk by artist and designer Stefan Sagmeister. If you guys haven't seen it, jot it down. It's so good. And in this talk, he talks about the difference between jobs, careers, and callings. This really stuck with me because I had never thought about them as different things. And the question that I would ask you guys is, do you think about them as different things? A job, he says, is something typically done from 9 to 5 for pay. A career is a system of advancements and achievements over time. And a calling is something done for intrinsic value, regardless of if you get paid or not. This is actually a business card that I found on Instagram. It says, Leroy Chow, astronaut. No phone number, no email, it just says astronaut. The purpose of this card is most excellent. I love it. So the reason I think it's really cool to look at these things as different is because I would recommend taking your projects, your work, paid and unpaid, and mapping it across these 3 columns. Because it would be a mistake if we automatically assumed that our jobs or even our careers are also our calling, as that is not always the case. Around the same time, I picked up a phenomenal book by Ariana Huffington about Picasso and his life. And in it, as she was learning about his work and his life, she said, and I quote, "The more I learned about his life and the more I delved into his art, the more the two converged. It's not what an artist does that counts, but who he is," Picasso said. But Picasso's art was so thoroughly autobiographical that what he did was what he was. You guys, I read that sentence over and over. What he did was what he was. What he did was what he was. And it led me to this big hypothesis. What if our job was our work, was our career, was our calling? What if they were all one in the same? What if there was a fluidity between and amidst those 3 columns? What if our work was so personal, so thoroughly autobiographical, as Ariana writes, that you can no longer separate the product from the person? In this world, the concept of having a title around your job no longer even makes sense, because we no longer even go to work. Like Picasso, we become the work. It was February of 2013 when we shared Mailbox with the world. And I don't know if you guys use Mailbox. Some of you guys maybe have it on your phones. But on that particular day, we had a wait list for people signing up. Everything was going wonderfully in terms of all the technology holding up. It was great. The press coverage was wonderful. It was, in short, wildly successful. And I remember looking around the room. There's balloons and cookies and all of the jitters of having a really fun launch with your team. I remember looking around that room and thinking, wow, this is one of the highlights of my life. This is like the dream to go through this whole cycle. This is so cool. But in the back of my mind, I had no idea what any of it had to do with my dream of a white room. This was when the crossroads appeared very clearly in my life. 2 roads, both appealing, but they were different. And I had to choose. I looked at my finances. I saw that I could buy myself a couple of months to give it a go, making art as a full-time artist. And I put in my notice. What I have learned since that day is that we arrive at this crossroads over and over again throughout our lives. And this crossroads might be a really big crossroads, or it might be small. But we come to it every time we have to make a decision and decide which way our life is going to go. On one hand, we have should. Should is how other people want us to show up in the world. Should is all of the expectations that other people layer upon us. When we choose should, the adventure can often be pleasant. It can also often be quite nice. A lot of times around should, there are lots of rewards and incentives. But when we choose should, we're choosing to live our life for someone or something other than ourselves. Must is different. Must is who you are. Must is what you believe, what you know to be true when you are alone with your truest, most authentic self. A couple weeks ago, somebody said to me, I get it. Must is like being in love. When you know, you know. I think must lives right here. It's just this thing that's inexplicable. It's undeniable. You can't explain must. It just is. It exists. And if there is one thing that I have learned from this work, it's this. Choosing must is the greatest thing that we can do with our lives. Must sounds awesome. Okay, cool. Let's all go choose must. Well, if it's so great, why don't we choose it all the time? This is the real question. Well, I was having a phone call with a wonderful, wonderful friend of mine. And he said to me, have you heard of a man named Gurdjieff? Have you guys heard of this guy, Gurdjieff? There's usually like one hand that's like, oh, yes. Gurdjieff was this amazing spiritual teacher around the turn of the century. And my friend on the phone is telling me about his life. And he says to me, one day Gurdjieff posed a question to his pupils. He asked his students, if a prisoner wants to be free from prison, what's the very first thing that the prisoner needs to know? One student raises their hand and says, well, the prisoner needs to get to know the guard. Another student raises their hand and says, well, the prisoner's got to find the key. No, Gurdjieff says, if a prisoner wants to be free from prison, the very first thing that they need to know is that they are in prison. Until they know that, no escape is possible. I love this. I love this. You should never. You should always. You should know better than to. You should not. These are the belief systems that we consciously, unconsciously inhabit in our lives that create our own prison. And just as we create these walls, we can also take them down. I'm increasingly beginning to realize, especially when I wrote the Medium post, that the Medium post focuses a lot on must. Must is really fun. Must is beautiful. When you see somebody stepping fully into their must, you just feel it. You know it. It is life affirming. However, the big shift from the post to the book was digging more into should, right? Because somebody said to me the other day, like the verb scattered, when you say that you're scattered, it's quite literally an experience where your energy is going in different directions. And if you imagine trying to send your energy towards must, but you're scattered and you have energy still pulling you towards should, it just kind of slows that journey down. And what I love as I think about this is that if we want to be free, if we want to live the fullness of our lives and our potential, we first have to understand why we are not free and what keeps us from being free. And there are ways to do that. One of the techniques that I talk about in the book and that I'm going to share with you today is if you take those sentences from the previous page on a piece of paper and write them down, you should, you should, you should, and fill them in and go through and ask them these 3 questions one by one. It's pretty simple. You look at your first sentence and you ask it, hello, should. Where did you first come from? When did I first pick you up? I think you'll be surprised that a lot of the shoulds are not small things like you should go see that movie or you should listen to that Christina Aguilera song. It's really more the big shoulds that we're talking about. And a lot of times these pop up early on in childhood. These might come from the time in which we're born. These might come from the community into which we're born. It might even be subversive things through advertising. You never know, but they happen very early on. And the shoulds that I'm talking about are the ones that dramatically alter your life path. So if you take it and you say, hey, should, where did you come from? That's the first. The second, are you really, really true for me, for who I have become in my life today? And 3, do I really want to keep holding on to you? Because you know you're kind of heavy. And I've got to take you into every meeting, every relationship, every project, every friendship. And the cool thing about doing this is that through self-awareness about our shoulds, we have the opportunity to say, wow, you are really, really hard and you require a lot of effort, but I so want this in my life. And then it ceases to be a should and becomes a must. Or you might say, wow, thank you. You have served your purpose and I kindly set you down now. And you walk away. And the most amazing thing begins to happen as we become more mindful of our shoulds. It focuses our energy. We're less scattered. We pull together and we have more energy and focus for what's ahead, which is must. So speaking with you guys here today is a really wonderful moment because while the book isn't out yet, I've had the opportunity to talk about this work with a lot of folks. And I wanted to share with you the 3 biggest questions that people ask me about how to achieve a sustainable must in their life. The first one, a guy came up to me after a conference and he had his hands behind his back and he leaned over and I thought, what's he doing? He was whispering and he asked me this question. He said, but what if I don't know what my must is? I said 2 things to this man. First, cool, welcome. And second, call your mother. Call your mom or someone who knew you when you were little and ask them to tell you stories about what you were like. Nowhere is the essence of must more purely exhibited than when we're kids. This is this magical human being who comes into my studio and she paints. It's phenomenal to watch her work. I learn so much from her. Call your mom, have them tell you stories about what you were like, and write those stories down on a piece of paper. The stories might not make sense to you when you hear them, but they contain seeds of truth worth examining that most likely will reveal themselves over time. 2, choosing must raises a lot of really big, scary questions, and they were all asked to me on Twitter. Some of the questions include, but are not limited to, Do I have to quit my job? How long will all of this take? Who am I to explore such selfish interests? How do I explain any of this to my boss? And my favorite, oh my God, what if I am the boss? If we want to choose must in our life, if we want it to be sustainable, we have to answer these questions. And the biggest question that I get asked over and over and over again is, but what if doing what I love doesn't pay? This was a huge leap post-blog, pre-book, that I spent an inordinate amount of pages diving into, because this is a great question. How do we make it work? Well, it turns out that throughout time, there are all these really, really brilliant, smart people who have figured out how to answer it. So I'm going to let them answer it today. One of the stories that I came across was T.S. Eliot. When we think of T.S. Eliot, we think of him as an author, yeah? So I would say that T.S. Eliot, his calling was in being a writer. But did you know that T.S. Eliot was also a banker? He was a phenomenal banker. He had a wonderful career that I would argue he probably loved deeply. And something about that combination most likely enabled him to write phenomenal books. Another author, Kurt Vonnegut, I would say he had a calling also to be a writer. Did you know that he also sold cars? How cool! I just love, can you imagine buying a car from Kurt Vonnegut? So throughout time, Keith Haring, he worked as a busboy. We've got Albert Einstein, who is toiling away from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., 6 days a week, in a patent office for 6 or 7 years. And it was while he had his job or his career working in the patent office that he came up with his most brilliant ideas about relativity. These stories fascinated me because you know what they mean? They mean that we get to combine these three things any way that we want. And here's the trick. There is no one right answer. Wow, that's awesome. You might have a job, 9 to 5, while you pursue your calling on nights and weekends. Or you might be dedicated to your calling full-time and make a living from it. But the big takeaway is that just because you do something for money doesn't make that work dirty. There is dignity in all work. There is dignity in all work. And just because you want to find your calling definitely does not mean that you need to quit your job. I have learned so much from the people who have organized these three things in different ways. And the question that I ask for you is, what makes sense for you in your life? What do you need? One of the wonderful stories that I had the pleasure of discovering was about Philip Glass. Philip Glass is one of the most amazing composers of our time. And there's this interview, which I'd love to share with you today. He says, while working, I suddenly heard a noise, and I looked up to find Robert Hughes, the art critic of Time magazine, staring at me in disbelief. "But you're Philip Glass! What are you doing here?" Well, it was obvious that I was installing his dishwasher, and I told him that I would soon be finished. "But you're an artist," he protested. I explained that I was an artist, but I was sometimes a plumber as well, and he should go away and let me finish. The third big question that people ask is, but Elle, what if I don't have space for must? What a great, great question. I love this one. What if I don't have space for must? Well, for me, my space is my white room. It's where I go to just quiet the world and drop into my work. But it doesn't have to be a white room. It doesn't even have to be a space with a door. It could be a park bench. That whenever you walk past it, you commit to sitting on that bench for 5 minutes. It could be a spot at the public library where you go and work on weekends. It could be a block of time in your calendar, 10 minutes a day. Block it off and just write must. Somebody said, what do I do with that 10 minutes if I block it off in my calendar? There's this wonderful story about a painter, and if somebody remembers his name, let me know. I'll find it later. But he said once that if he walked into the studio and walked up to his canvas and already knew what he was going to paint, he promptly turned around and left the studio and went for a nice long walk until all of the ideas were thoroughly gone. He didn't return to the studio until he had that emptiness to just open himself up to the moment of what was flowing through him. I would say, if you block off 10 minutes, just show up and say, why am I here today? The answer will come. The question that I have begun to wonder is, why don't we make space for this? I think the idea of choosing must is so dreamy. It's like this romantic idea of finally, getting that one-way ticket to a faraway place and working on our masterpiece finally for 3 months uninterrupted without email. There's something wonderfully delicious about that as a dream. And while I think it's important to dream, the thing that creates the dream isn't the verb to dream, it's to work. The dream is to find 10 minutes. And a lot of times when I talk to people who are like this, about to leap and step away from their day jobs, I would want to make sure that that person is putting in at least 1 to 2 hours every day on nights and weekends, 7 days a week, before that decision was a good one. Because it requires that we show up and that we work every day. And the reason why we don't show up and we don't work every day, and even putting in 10 minutes is unthinkable, is because we're busy. And we are so addicted to being busy. So if you want to find must, find 10 minutes. And the question that I would leave you with is, where is your space? There's this wonderful quote. It's not enough to reach the treasure. One must bring it back. I love what Stuart was saying about sharing our work. Yes, meet somebody. Pick up a new idea. Don't just get inspired, actually do something. I love this. You've got to share that treasure. And this is the thing that I've begun to realize is the beauty of this work. When we share our must, when we put it out there in the world, you never, ever know who out there is just waiting to receive what you have to give. Mark Twain once said that the 2 most important days in our life are the day you are born and the day that you find out why. I'm increasingly beginning to understand that we will find the answer to that second day at the intersection between these 2 roads. If you want to choose must, you can. And you can do it today. Cool? And here's how. Just do one thing. Something small. 5 minutes. Just take one step towards that which you must do. I wanted to conclude today with a story, specifically a story about a piano. I was in San Francisco, and I was taking myself on an artist date. Have you guys read Julia Cameron's The Artist Way? It's so good. It's so good. I know somebody just bought it yesterday. It's so good. So in it, she talks about how to get more in touch with your creativity, and she has this one assignment called taking yourself, your inner artist, on a date. And for me, I wanted to take my inner artist to go hear the piano. I was just kind of craving hearing the piano. I don't know why. I just went. So I got all dressed up, and I got on my bike, and I biked across the city, and I parked right out front, and I went up, and I got a seat in the 3rd row. And I went alone, and I went, and the performer was Andreas Schiff, and he was playing Bach's French Suites that evening. And I sat in the 3rd row, and the man next to me had also come alone. And have you ever sat next to somebody during a performance or a thing where they're just really enjoying it? That was the case for this man. He clapped louder than anyone else around us, and he almost seemed to vibrate at a different frequency. It was an experience that was palpable. And at the end of the performance, knowing perfectly well, like how he would probably answer this question, I leaned over and I said, "So, what did you think?" And he looked at me and he said, I have downloaded this artist's music for years. I have listened to all of his music. But this, to be here in the third row, to be so close that I can feel the vibrations of the piano in my chest, to sit here and to watch him play for 3 straight hours from memory with his eyes closed. This is to experience something with soul in it. Wow, I said, wow, you must be a pianist. Who, me? He said, no, I can't play a tune. But I often have this dream where I can. Thank you.